Joining us now is power attorney Joseph T. Burns from Holtzman Vogel Power Law Firm. Joe, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. Thanks for inviting me on.
Of course. So, what is going on in the People's Republic in New York? Because obviously in Texas, it seems as though the law is clear, they can redistrict. But here, it seems like Kathy Hochul and Democrats are trying to pull a fast one and saying, hey, we're going to try and do it early. So, for folks who aren't too familiar with what exactly this means and why it impacts them, what would you say?
What it means, I think the governor's been pretty clear, and some other New York Democrats as well have been pretty clear that they're looking to do a mid-decade redistricting in New York, in what appears to be retaliation for this mid-decade redistricting in Texas. There's a couple problems with that, certainly. Number one, the state constitution seems to be pretty clear that this wouldn't be permitted. If you recall, we had in 2022 the first round of redistricting. State legislature rejected what the maps that were produced by the commission and drew their own, which became known as the Hochulmander because it was so incredibly biased and partisan towards Democratic House members. That was thrown out by the state courts. State constitution, pursuant to a 2014 amendment that was adopted by the voters, prohibits partisan gerrymandering. And so that was thrown out. Courts drew a map. Democrats went back to the courts after you had those elections in 2022, arguing that the legislature gets another crack at drawing maps because the first one, the one that was used, was drawn by a court. The courts went all the way to the State Court of Appeals, New York's highest court. State Court of Appeals, in a 4-3 decision, said, yes, that's right, and allowed the legislature to redraw maps. So the maps we had in 2024 for Congress were different from 2022. So that, by all accounts, up until about a week or two ago, we all thought that redistricting was over in New York for this decade until after the next census. So I think Hochul, I think the governor, anyone else in Albany that might try to do another round of redistricting, I think they're going to run into some legal and constitutional problems.
So basically in Texas, they are trying to draw the lines, and they can, under their laws, to favor Republicans. They draw new congressional districts to basically squeeze out Democrats, get more Republican seats. And you know what? Like it or not, that's the law. They can do that. But in New York, it appears as though what's happening now, Joe, is Kathy Hochul is saying, well, screw the Constitution. I don't care. I'm going to try to draw favorable lines to squeeze out Republicans and get more Democratic seats, even though she can only do it 10 years. That pretty much sums it up, correct?
Like the United States, every state has their own state constitution. In 2014, leading up to 2014, both houses of the state legislature, at the instigation of then Governor Cuomo, approved an amendment to the state constitution that would prevent partisan gerrymandering. The amendment passed both houses. The Senate was then controlled by Republicans. Passed both houses pretty overwhelmingly with bipartisan support, went to the voters in 2014 as amendments, constitutional amendments have to, and the voters approved it, again, by a pretty healthy margin. And so partisan gerrymandering, partisanship in drawing district lines is prohibited in New York State. Some states have similar provisions. Some states have nothing. But ultimately, that's up to the state's decision. That's up to each individual state whether they're going to allow that or whether they're going to have a different process.
Joe, it sounds like Texas is going to be okay with redrawing their lines. I mean, obviously, Democratic legislators are hitting the road. It's a whole mess, but they want to get it done there in Texas for the midterms in 2026. But under the state constitution here in New York, it sounds like it can't happen that soon, correct?
If the governor were to try to get this done either later this year or at the beginning of 2026 for the 2026 elections, I think she's going to run into a number of legal and constitutional roadblocks. Now, what might happen, and there's been some suggestions of this, what might happen is that they might start the process of amending the state constitution to remove some of the provisions of the 2014 anti-gerrymandering amendment. But if they go through that process you're still going to need to have that amendment approved by 2 consecutively elected state legislatures. So presumably it could happen in 26 and then again in 27. So the soonest that could actually go to the voters is in the general election of 2027. That that might open the door for this to happen in 2028, but at that time, I think this, in many respects, this would be in the rearview mirror. And I would also say that there was an attempt to weaken the anti-gerrymandering amendment back in 2021, and the voters of New York rejected that. So it's hard to believe that things have changed that much that voters of New York would then be okay with weakening these anti-gerrymandering provisions.
Last question for you, Joe. Kathy Hochul, correct me if I'm wrong, lost twice in court, got slapped back by the courts twice when she tried to basically draw lines, ridiculously, that favored Democrats. It seems as though this is going on the path, or that's going to happen a potential third time if the governor and Democrats keep going and trying to basically change the lines when they're really not supposed to or can.
Back in 2022, this is when that very partisan map was approved by the state legislature. It was so egregiously partisan, it became known as the Hochulmander. The governor, the map was challenged, lost in Supreme Court in Steuben County, lost at the appellate division in a 3-2 decision, and then in the state court of appeals by 4-3 decision. Now, there's been some personnel changes at the state court of appeals, but if you look back at the decision from 2023, which allowed for this 2024 redistricting, it's really hard to see how an additional redistricting comports with that decision. So I think if the governor does go down this road for 2026 redistricting, I think she's going to run into a number of legal and constitutional roadblocks. And I should also point out, the intention of the amendment was to take the anti-gerrymandering amendment was to take partisan politics, take partisanship out of the redistricting process. And I think so far, this last week or these last couple of weeks, I think the governor's been pretty open about how, if this was to be done, the reason would be politics. The reason would be partisan politics, which also flies in the face of that amendment. So legally, constitutionally, I think the governor has a very tough road to hoe here.